What is going on, Comic Fam? It's your boy, the Bearded Comic Bro, and I am joined by comic creator Stephanie Williams. Welcome to the show.
Hey, I am so happy to be here.
I'm excited for you to be here because we met at Cleveland at Fan Expo
Mhm.
Cleveland over in the spring, and I was just like, I gotta have you on because I went to one of you were at a part of a talk and draw, and you did the greatest crossover ever of having a blue character crossed over with X-Men, and I'm like, this is a crossover I need in my life.
Yes, since then I've been like working on it because I'm like, oh, maybe this is something I could do at more conventions. But it's funny because Bluey I watch almost every single day with my kid, and then we were watching X-Men 97, so it just kind of all worked out.
Yeah, you can tell you're like as like who the parents are because I was like Bluey. I'm like I don't want that's the sketch I wanted to win. It's so good. If people aren't familiar with your work, I mean, we got the Nubia books from DC, and you were just in Star Trek celebrations, and Moon Girl and Trials of Amazon, all the stuff. Like My Little Pony, like you are across the board working. I want to get into some of your works, but I always like to know, did you always like comics? Like, did you grow up reading comics, or was this something kind of came later in life?
I have always enjoyed comics. I grew up reading them. Funny enough, my entry point to comics was like I think it's Avengers 361 or 371. But in this, there's like this throuple going on between Cersei, Black Knight, and Crystal, and like Vision at this time had been reset because the whole drama with Wanda and the kids and everything, and it was just like really dramatic. And I was like, oh, this is like the soap operas that my grandmother and my mom watches, but they're superheroes. So like I know this stuff. So from there, just kind of connecting things like Capcom versus X-Men or Street Fighter versus X-Men,
Mhm.
but like Storm and playing her and like watching the cartoons. And then Archie then took over my life for a good little while because I don't know, like I just really loved a good Archie digest. They were easy to sneak into the cart until my mom was like, I know that you're putting them in the cart. Just put it up here so it doesn't get mixed in with the other stuff. So they've just always been a part of my life. And I don't know, like it was just really cool by the time the MCU came about and the friends that I remember like weren't really into comics were like, okay, but I know that you are. So like tell me about Iron Man. Tell me about these things that we never really asked you about before. So they've just always been in the backdrop.
Yeah, the movies were making the stuff that we loved cool.
Yes.
that people like, I don't know, and you're able then to culture your friends on what like. Listen, I was telling you all from the get go, like. So
Now
where
you know.
right where was this then transition from enjoying comics, loving comics, reading them as a kid to go, okay, I want to start to create comics.
I want to say that it was when I actually started writing freelance pieces for like sci-fi fangirls and marvel.com where I would do these character deep dives and even the podcast that I did, Missy Knight's Uninformed Afro, where we just kind of took this academic approach in talking about Black superheroines and characters in comics. And I think from there, I don't know, like it just reaffirmed to me why I love the craft so much. Just it's just such an interesting way to tell stories. And I love that like a lot of periodicals, you could tell what was happening in culture when you pick up when you look at a comic. Especially like the 80s and 90s with the fashions, because superheroes, it we're just talking superhero comics, like they got to dress outside of their suits, right?
Yeah.
Especially like the X-Men. So I don't know, like from there, it just got me to thinking. I've always been interested in creative writing. Like I did a lot of fanfic. Like my very first fanfic was Mad About You. I was like, it was like 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was watching the reruns because I think at the time we didn't have cable and it was just like a thing that was on. And I was like, oh, I really like this show, but what would it be like if these characters were, I mean, if they were black? So then I did my own version of Mad About You. So I've always just kind of been dabbling in creative writing. So I don't know. Eventually, I was like, okay, well, I read them enough. I write about them enough. I want to tell my own story.
Mm.
So the web comic came into place, Parenthood Activate, and then But What If Though, which with all of my comic knowledge, it was like I can do some funny like deep dive Easter egg type stuff with it. And then, it just kind of blossomed into me talking to you today and like all these books, something that I honestly did not see coming.
Yeah, so you started as like you said, doing write-ups, and you said for sci-fi and stuff like
Uh-huh.
that, right? Which is
Yes.
so cool to then be like, "You know what? Why am I writing about this? I should be writing these things and have people write about me, right? These things."
Yes.
I love it. I love it. So you like I said, you've been doing a lot of stuff with the Marvel, with especially with the digital comics and stuff they're putting out. My first exposure to you was Nubia. Um, that summer when they did the trial of the Amazon event, like I was all in. I was consuming everything. So where was it that you were able to start to kind of bridge into, writing Marvel, writing for DC, kind of taking that stuff that you started with web comics and things like that? Where did you kind of segue into that world?
So it's so funny. It wasn't even Living Heroes. So Living Heroes is the fan comic that I did. That's the crossover between Living Single and Marvel. But it wasn't even that. It was an article that I wrote for Sci-Fi Fangirls about the best butts in Marvel. It's like this countdown list that I did. I think either Venom or Spider-Man was like number one. Especially from like the early '90s comics with Todd McFarlane. Like the butts were budding. So anyway, the editor happened to see that, and I don't know, she just loved it and she was like, "Hey, would you like to do Marv Voices Legacy, the anthology?" I was like, "Yes." Like, who do you want to write? I'm like, Monica Rambeau. So I had like a two-page story. And at first I freaked out and I was like, what the heck do I do for like 2 pages? Like, what do I do? And I'm like, oh, you just do Living Heroes, but you do it in Marvel style, sort of fit in this book. And then I think the week that came out, I spoke to the editor at DC, thanks to Vita Ayala, who mentioned me for, I didn't know at the time it was for Nubia. I just thought it was for Wonder Woman Black and Gold, to write a
Mhm.
story for that anthology. And then next thing I knew, after I turned that script in, the editor's like, "Hey, Vita wants to talk to you about your story." I'm like, "Why would Vita want to talk to me about this 8 page story?" I'm like, "I'm pretty sure Vita has other things to do." And like an hour into our conversation, Vita's like, "Okay, yes, Stephanie, that's great, but also like, what do you want to do with Nubia?" And I'm like, "What do you mean what I want to do with Nubia?" And that's just kind of how it all clicked. And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to be writing Nubia," and
Yeah.
it went from there.
So where's the prep work for you? Like, how do you process going into something like Nubia? Some of these established characters. How much research do you do? How much like because you want to bring your own flavor to it, I'm
Mhm.
sure as well. But still trying to stay with in continuity or what's been told or done before. How do you kind of process that as a writer?
So for Nubia was an interesting one, just because she didn't really have a ton of history. Just like her initial appearance, of course, in Wonder Woman was it 703, 704, and then like some pop-ups here and there, but nothing concrete. So then it was like, okay, this is great because we kind of have a new character that's an existing character, but at the same time, like she's got this huge role as queen. So what does that look like? Also, why would you care about her being queen if you didn't really know the Amazons? And like Diana sometimes goes home, but like she's not really there. So that was the other thing. So for me, George Perez's run of Wonder Woman was one that was near and dear to my heart. So I went back and I reread that, because I just always felt like he had a really firm grasp on who the Amazons are, and why Diana is the way that she is. So to me, just going back and rereading that to just kind of get just the foundations of the Amazons would allow me to start having building blocks for Nubia as well as the other Amazons that we introduced, and just their culture overall. But one thing about writing comics is that you just don't have to read comics in order to write them. So I took inspiration from other things. So I checked out Madeline Miller's Circe. I cannot like recommend that book enough, but a friend of mine, Aaron Reese, suggested the book to me, and he knows I love a good audiobook. I'm a mom, so sometimes like while I'm little cooking or whatever, like that's the easiest way for me to like
Yep.
get into new stuff. And I loved it because for this in this book, women are the main focus. They're the villains. They're the protagonists. Like they're all of these things. And that's kind of how I wanted the story to be. I wanted to focus, since we're on Themyscira, like it's just nothing but women there. So like let's make the focus that. So a lot of inspiration from that. I even watched 300. Not to say any, like the direct inspiration from, but like everything that was either Greek mythology adjacent or
Mm.
whatever. Blood of Zeus, I ended up watching that. That was on Netflix at the time. I watched Troy for the first time. Believe it or not, I had went this entire time in my life and I had not seen the movie Troy. So like I was just trying to absorb everything that I could to kind of really lock me into like this world, this fictional world of Themyscira. And of course, I watched some old Wonder Woman movies too. Crazy that we only have two animated Wonder Woman movies, but that's
Yeah.
another story for another day.
Yeah, well, and it was really was a interesting time, at DC because you had the new characters of Yara Floor and
Mhm.
Nubia was new to a lot of us. I think, like you said, there wasn't a lot of story, and you're getting exposed to this. You have an established world, but you really don't. Of like, there's some rules that you had to play with, but it felt like we were getting a brand new character almost here, and to kind of get to see an origin story of Nubia as she's kind of growing up into how past stuff played into it. And how was that then like so something like Nubia, like working as a co-writer, along with Vita, and you came in saying you were thinking you were doing an 8-page story, and then it was like turned into I think this arc was what, 6
Six.
issues? Okay.
Mhm.
So how was
Um,
co-writing for you then?
that was great because Vita is amazing. Vita was like, "Hey, so like I'm here, but like this is your thing. This is why I suggested you for this.
Mm.
So like, I'm here to help in any way that you need, but like this is your baby. Like, what do you want to do?" And I want to say, like, by issue 3, like, I really felt like I had my legs under me. And by then, I think I was still, of course, checking in with Vita to say, like, hey, like, does this outline look good and everything? But I just learned so much from Vita. I just cannot thank them enough for just kind of being there to not only have the confidence in me that I could do this, but also to just like to be there. Like that was like that was a mentorship for
Yeah.
me. And it was just phenomenal to have that experience while working on something like this.
Yeah. And then you get into Nubia, and then was Trial of the Amazon before Queen of the Amazons, or was that okay?
Yeah, so it was before, and it's funny because for Nubia, the first series, like I knew that was tricky because it was not only introducing her, but of course, like the other Amazons, and then we were leading into this event. So technically, I was like, okay, well, Nubia story we got to wrap up in 5 issues. The sixth one would be dedicated to trial, and then coming out of trial, I was like asked, like, hey, like, what else do you want to do with Nubia? And I was like, oh, okay, well, so we found out about the coordination special, and put that together, and then started working on the outline for Queen of the Amazons and like what did that look like coming out of trial. And for me, because all of the Amazon tribes that come together, I was like, okay, well, Nubia to me is a queen that would be like active, so let's have her go out into the world, and because of the Well of Souls, let's give some folks her life pre-well, to just again trying to give more bits and pieces of her and who she is, just as a character. And it was just, yeah. And then I was watching A View to Kill and I was like, I want a Grace Jones inspired villain. So that's kind of where her villain came in.
That, and I love that arc because you interact Nubia with a bunch of different established
Mhm.
heroes that we are familiar with, with Hawk Girl, and but I think issue one of that was when they're with the Justice League, and there is a scene where you have a character ask Batman if he has any gum in one of his purses around his waist, and I laughed out loud because I'm as a huge Batman fan,
Yeah.
just like the obscurity of like someone like, oh, you have to have something in the purses.
I mean, you absolutely, and I love Batman too. But like I would ask Bruce that as well. I'm like, I know you've got some trident somewhere. You have to. If you don't, then you're not. We need to have some conversation, Bruce, because you got to have a contingency plan for somebody who might have bad breath.
Right. You never know.
Right.
What type of gum would Batman have in his utility belt? What flavor?
I feel like he might be a either extra or icebreaker person, and it's
Mm.
definitely either, you know what, I feel like he's against spearmint, so it's got to be like a cool mint or something like that. I can see that.
That
No,
the icy
yeah,
cold. Yeah,
yeah.
I can see that. I love it. Was it, kind of, coming into a writer, you worked with Vito a little bit, you worked with them at the beginning, and then you jump right into this kind of event. How was that trying to navigate your story within all these other stories that were tying in? Because that went across a lot of books,
Yeah, I mean, again, like trial by fire, right? But
right?
thankfully, everyone I got to work with, like Joelle Jones, Michael Conrad, and Becky Cloonan, were all amazing. So we would kind of have like these monthly, even weekly meetings, which was always really cool because I'm around these folks that have been writing and just making comics for a while. So again, like it was just me trying to absorb everything and eventually getting comfortable enough to like be pretty vocal during meetings because they were also very encouraging with that and like, oh, you guys do want to hear my ideas, well, I think I think this could be pretty cool. So I don't like, just a wonderful experience for my first like major comic thing. Like I couldn't be more blessed. Like I just really appreciate that because I know that that's a rarity. So in that moment I was like, okay, well, while I'm here, like let me soak up as much as I can.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, the names you listed that were tied to that event have been around forever of like I think of and like iconic in the names. So like it's got to be cool trying, like you said, soaking up those moments and kind of gleaming knowledge off of, just other great creators as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like Joelle, happened to get was able to go out to dinner with her, our editor Brittany, and then Alita Martinez, and that was just really fun to just kind of talk to folks outside of the comics thing and just kind of like their journey into comics and just their journey in life period. But it was just really cool.
Is as a fan too, like you grew up as a fan,
Yeah.
you were writing stuff like this. Was there like some of those like surreal moments you're like, I'm a peer now with some of these like people that I looked up to and respected for, years growing up.
All the time. I make it my business when I'm at conventions to like go up to creators
Mm,
that heavily inspired me, and just say, hey, thank you for your work, or to tell them like what stories just really, I don't know, just really spoke to me. Last year at GalaxyCon in Raleigh, for the first time ever, a creator came up to me, one that I just really, really adore, and that was Mark Way. And it took me by surprise because like I heard this voice and it didn't register. I was thinking I was like reading something or talking to Steve Orlando. And then it's like, hey, Stephanie Williams, like I'm Mark Way. And I was like, wait, what? So I look up and he's a really sweet guy. And I was like, oh my God. So I was trying not to fangirl out. And then I was like, okay, well, because I feel compelled to tell you this. Now that I've been writing comics for a little bit, I feel differently about how I felt about Champions. Because I was like, I was kind of tough on you about the dialogue, but I get it now. Dialogue's hard. Also, writing teenagers, also very hard. So he kind of thought that was funny. He was like, you get it now, right? And I was like, I absolutely do.
yeah. Well, it is funny because I feel like I listen to enough comic book podcasts and stuff, and one of the things people always mention is on anybody is like, it's tough to get teenage dialogue.
Yes. And
And
I'm like, I got a 17-year-old brother, and half the time when I'm talking to him, I'm just like, uh-huh, right. Where's my decoder? Because what are we
right.
talking about?
And let's be honest, the way comics even work, by the time you think you have the slang down or the dialect, by, by the year that comic comes out, it's completely different. And you're like, you're old then if you talk.
Yes. So I tried to keep the dialogue as evergreen as possible. There's some slang that's always going to be evergreen,
Right.
but the more catchier things, I'm like, I mean, it would be nice to put this in here. Probably would make it for a great viral moment, but no, because I don't want someone reading this like 4 or 5 years from now saying like, wait, what? Like
Yeah.
lit? What are you talking about?
What does that even mean?
Right.
Well, you've mentioned Vita, you mentioned Steve, and like I said, you just were on a book that came out with both of them. Multiple stories in this. Well, how'd you get connected with the Star Trek celebrations?
So I had actually been in contact with Heather Antos, the editor, on that last year, just kind of talking about some Star Trek stuff and just like
Mhm.
my love for it. We were trying to work on something and then it ended up getting canned. So Heather circled back around to me for this. And I was like, yeah, I'm ready. So it was one of those things where it was a quick turnaround. But I'm somebody where I'm just kind of like, well, you stay ready so you don't have to get ready. So I already kind of had some ideas percolating for a story that I would want to tell with Disco. Reno and Stamets, I'm like, I think that whatever their friendship could be really fun, just because of their personalities. So that's just kind of how that story ended up unfolding. And next thing I knew, I was turning in the script, and this was like within a week.
So good. So you mentioned, as a mom, staying busy. How and you are one of the creators I see that is like dipping your toe in every single like pop culture like landscape that you can between DC characters and Marvel characters, Star Trek, My Little Pony. Like, how do you get to be aware of all these fandoms, like, and like know like you're able to put your touch on them?
So a lot of it is just me being a nerd. And
Okay.
the other part is like definitely my kid. Because My Little Pony, that wasn't something that I was necessarily into. He actually was watching Friendship as Magic. This is long before I even knew I would even be writing comics or even My Little Pony for that. And then I started watching it along with him. I was like, oh wait, this is actually really good. So funny enough, when the time came for me to enter the world of My Little Pony, I was like, okay, I'm not so far removed. And it was easy for me to jump in. But again, because of, I don't know, maybe it's my research background and because I was like doing that beforehand, I just really love learning new things, whether it's pop culture, history,
Mhm.
whatever. So some I don't like I just find it fun to just hop into new worlds and figure out what's going on and to see like what I could put like what story could I tell in that? Like what touch can I put on that to make it sound like a Stephanie Williams story?
Yeah. Do you, as a writer, do you have kind of the idea of where you want to go and see if there are characters that fit that world, like that are established, or is it like, hey, we have a Nubia story. Do you have, and like, did they say like, do you have something for Nubia? And you go, no, but I might for this. Like, how does that kind of process is coming up with your story ideas?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
Just recently there was something that I think I pitched for the Marvel Infinity comics, and they were like, "This is great, but we don't have space for it right now. But would you like to tell a Peter Parker story?" So I just kind of like, all right. So I took the pitch that I did have and I kind of made it for Peter. There have been other instances where someone is like, "Hey, for Magic the Gathering, for instance, I didn't know any, I mean, other than like being aware of Magic the Gathering, I had never played or anything like that. But the editors was like, no, it's okay. We think you would do a great job. Like they gave me all this information. They had the comics and everything. And from there, they were like, okay, so for the Planeswalkers, like we need a story. Like here are the ones that you can pick from. So I did find too that I was like, ooh, I can go to romance angle. Because I'm like, that's always great for fantasy. It's just sometimes a little bit of both. There have been other times where I've had a completely new thing and I pitched it, and the editor's like, "Okay, great, like get to writing it."
Yeah. So at the time of this recording and when this drops, I see that you're about to be going to Heroes Con, and I've got a
Yes.
lot of friends going to Heroes Con. So like, is that something you love to do, getting to go to cons now as a creator?
It honestly is because in a day and age of like just social media, sometimes I don't it's crazy. You feel very connected but also disconnected at the same time. Sometimes it feels like maybe some folks aren't reading your things. It's just like, am I putting out stories into the void? So comic conventions are just a really great way to connect with fans, talk to them, and I don't know, it's just like a really great community experience. So like I absolutely love conventions. There have been times where I leave feeling full. When
Mm.
I arrived, I was feeling imposter syndrome was like really beat me down. And then I leave and I'm like, okay, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. So Heroes Con, I love because it's my hometown convention and it's just a really great con. It's focused on creators. No shades to the other conventions where we have celebrities and stuff there, but like I know that you want to see Chris Evans. You don't want to see me. Like, I get it. I also don't want to see me. I would rather see Chris Evans.
Hence why you wrote an article about Marvel spots.
Yes.
So, well, I saw a post just a little bit ago that there's a budding writer that's coming for your job. who's gonna be debuting something at Heroes Con. Like, how is that then as a parent, like getting to see that?
So cool. Because he's just been, even before I was doing like he would draw and some was like just very creative. And then he started paying attention to what I was doing. I think it finally clicked maybe when he was about 6 or so that I was like actually writing books. So made him a deal on Christmas when we got him new stuff. And I was like, hey, if you finish your comic in time, like mommy will print it and you can sell it at the convention. Because before he would like do commissions or whatever.
Yeah.
And he did it. And for me, it was really more so, I was going to print it anyway, but for me, it was more so I wanted him to, finish the thing that he started.
Yeah.
That is something that even as an adult, I sometimes struggle with. So I'm like, if I can instill that into you early, then hopefully that pays off later. And I am just so happy we were able to do that. So
That's so
he will have the Adventures of Beeble ready. And funny enough, like, it's a solid story. It's
yeah.
some drama. There's an election that goes on, tornado army. It's pretty dope.
I'm excited. And I'll be honest, if one of my listeners is going to Heroes Con, I need you to get that comic, get a picture with the creative team so I can, and then I'll Venmo you money, but I need to have that book in my life. So if you're listening on your way trekking to Heroes Con, like that is your mission now for me. Go to Stephanie's table and say, Bearded sent me. I got to get this book.
Yes, I am at AA 1401 too. I'll be sitting right next to Asia Simone, who worked with me on the Moon Girl book. So you get a 2 for 1.
Nice. There you go. So, Stephanie, I hesitate to ask this because you've got so much that you are working on. Is there stuff that we haven't gotten to talk about that you'd love to hit on or promote or mention or
Yes, My Little Pony, the new series that actually is out this week. As it's my first My Little Pony miniseries. I'm very proud of it. Like superheroes, I can write in my sleep. The ponies, they almost broke me. Those the pony pun, just trying to be clever with the pony puns. I decided to do riddles of all things, which while I was writing, I was like, why would you do this to yourself? So I had to like evoke a little bit of Little Kim and Megan Thee Stallion for the rhymes for this. It was like really fun. But I'm really proud of this story. My editors, Riley, Vanessa Real, and Bixie were just amazing. Like editors are great. Like they are your friend. They hold you accountable and they make your stories make sense when you can't seem to work your way through the mud. So I'm really proud of that. And there is a light novel that I wrote that'll be out June 25th for Saturday AM. It's based on White Manga's Apple Black manga.
okay.
And it's called Apple Black Origins. So I am finally getting into the novel writing of it all, which is so insanely different than writing
Yeah.
comics. Yeah.
What's the difference of the process? Obviously, like I know comics being a visual medium, how has that then changed for you as a writer?
It was just for me remembering that like it's okay to get like long-winded with my wording because with comics like you got limited space economy. So even with dialogue, keeping it short and even in panel descriptions, so your art is trying to be as concise and straightforward as possible. For the light novels, like, oh wait, I can actually be as flowery as I want to. Let's open up the thesaurus and kind of go to town. So that was really great.
That's awesome. And so those are all like you said, My Little Pony's coming out this week. And your light novel is coming out in end of June, right?
Yeah, end of June. Yeah, June 25th.
Perfect. Uh, Stephanie, thank you so much for taking some time to talk about comics with me. Where can people follow along with you to stay up to date with what you're working on when you got new announcements and stuff?
All right. So go to whystuff.com, WHYSTEPH.com, and also at Steph, at Steph underscore I underscore Will. And that's on Instagram threads. My Twitter account is still active. I am not on there. I haven't tweeted since December. I will not be tweeting anytime soon. But if you want to see old stuff, that's all on there too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, End Gang, I'll have, as always, all the links and descriptions in the description of this video. If you're listening online, wherever you get your podcasts, check those descriptions as well. I'll have linked to all of Stephanie's things. And if you haven't gotten a chance to check out any of the books we've talked about so far, go pick them up. Like Nubia is such a fun read. I reread it, to talk this interview and the Trials of Amazon. Like, go pick up and all the stuff you're working over with Marvel on the digital stuff. Like, so much fun. So many good
Thank
things.
you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And with that being said, gang, if you're at HeroesCon, go see Stephanie. Tell them I sent you. And with that being said, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.